Hi class, this is our very first lesson. We're in chapter 1, which is called integers, and we're going to focus on what are integers and finding absolute value and understanding what that is. So we have some key vocabulary here at the top. While you're watching these lesson videos, I always recommend that you have your class notes in front of you for this lesson. So pull those out if you don't already. And you are going to go through, highlight what I highlight, and fill in what I fill in. So just make sure you have a pencil and a highlighter with you, part of your supplies. So first thing for a lesson, we're going to go through the vocabulary, which is just right here up at the top. Speed is going to tell us how fast an object is moving, but it does not tell us its direction. So speed is just how fast it's moving. Whereas velocity tells us how fast it's moving, but also tells us its direction. Which direction is it moving? Is it moving up? Is it moving down? Is it moving left, right? How is it moving? So a positive velocity means that it's moving upwards. Whereas a negative velocity would mean that it's moving down, which should make sense. Normally we think positive, up, negative, down. Now, what are integers? This is what our entire first chapter is about. That's all of our positive and negative whole numbers. All we're going to deal with this chapter are whole numbers. Chapter 2 is when we get into those decimals and fractions, what we call rational numbers. So integers are our whole numbers and their opposites, meaning it's all that's positive and negative versions of the numbers. So an example of a pair of integers are -4 and 4. Another pair would be -1 and 1. Maybe think about if you can think of another pair of integers. Maybe you're thinking -10 and 10. All of those are correct. They're whole numbers and they're opposites. So let's move down. We have one more vocabulary word here, and it's absolute value. So the absolute value of an integer is the distance between the number and 0 on a number line. So when you're finding absolute value, you're finding the number's distance from 0 on a number line. What does absolute value look like? It's going to be these parallel lines on either side of the number. So if I'm finding the absolute value of -5, you're really asking yourself, how far away is -5 from 0 on a number line? And our answer is 5. So those are our absolute value signs. And absolute value, the reason all these plus signs are around is because absolute value is always, always positive. When you're finding the absolute value, you're finding distance, and distance is always positive, right? How far away are you from something? You can't be a negative amount away from something. There's some sort of distance between you. So that's why when we're finding absolute value, we're always finding a positive value. So now what I would like you to do, we have these two problems here. It is your turn to try them. So if you want to pause the video for a few seconds and fill those in, you're finding the absolute value of 5 and the absolute value of -8. Press play once you've done that. Okay, welcome back. Let's check if you are correct. So finding the absolute value of 5. How far away is 5 from 0 on a number line? It would be 5 units. You are more than welcome, and I'm about to get into a number line itself, but you're more than welcome to go ahead and create your own number line. Make sure there's 0 and then count or jump to 5. How many units did you move? It would be 5. Now, what's the absolute value of a -8? How far away is -8 from 0? What's the distance? You should have gotten 8. Remember, it's the distance it is away from 0. Hopefully here you got +5 and didn't say -5. It's not opposites. It's distance from 0. So let's move down a little further and let's look here at number lines. I'm just going to remind you what a horizontal versus vertical looks like. If you are planning to come into our classroom at any point, I do have our door labeled horizontal and vertical, so you can always remember. But this is just something that you should know. Remember, horizontal, we're thinking the horizon, when the sun rises and sets. You know, that's our left to right. We're looking left to right. Whereas vertical, where it's like up and down, almost like a ladder. So I'm going to read real quick this remember with our little light bulb over here. It says a number line can be used to compare and order integers. Numbers to the left are less than numbers to the right. Numbers to the right are greater than numbers to the left. So the further left you go on a number line, the less those numbers become. And then the more right you move, obviously the greater those numbers are. So I just want to practice real quick labeling a number line. If you were to create your own, kind of like how I was creating one up here in green, you don't always have to have 0 on your number line. Are we going to have 0 a lot on our number line currently? Yes, probably. Does it have to go right in the middle? Not necessarily, but when we're practicing labeling here, I'm going to put it right in the middle. So all my numbers to the right of 0 are positive and they're getting bigger. As we move to the left, this is where we get into our negative numbers and they're getting smaller. So let's just label this. We'll just count by ones. Again, depending on what you're labeling, you could count by what you would like. So it might just look something like this. Again, as we're moving to the right, the numbers are getting bigger. Now, if I was to go to the left of 0, think about what comes right after 0 to the left. We're getting into our negatives. So it should be -1, -2, -3. So go ahead and label that. Now, if I wanted to ask you, what's the absolute value of -3? Right, we have this label now. You could say, all right, how far away is -3 from 0? 1, 2, it's 3 units. So the distance is 3. Remember, absolute value signs are always these straight parallel lines, right? They're not curved, they're straight. This, which some of you might be thinking of, those are parentheses. Those are not absolute value. That's just holding that negative in there with that number. All right, let's get back on track here. Vertical number lines. Let's label this one as well. Vertical. Now, this is a little different. We're going up and down. Now, think if we're going up, we're thinking positive. So all of our positive numbers are going to be on top of 0. And then all of our negatives are going to be as we go down. So remember, think rising is positive, going down is negative. So then we would just label this. Right after 0 would be -1, -2, and -3. Going up, we move in our positives. 1, 2, 3. Sometimes I like to talk about when you would get measured, right? You stand up against the wall. It's a vertical, almost like they're using a vertical number line to measure you. As you go up, the taller you're getting, right? And you're growing. Perfect. So that is our horizontal and vertical number lines. This is just a quick touch on our first lesson here. Is our first video. Hopefully you filled that all in. Take the time, go back and review this if you need to. Just reminders of our vocabulary. That's very important, what integers and absolute value are, and understanding those absolute value signs. And then soon enough, we're going to